Most people think a duke's proposal means security, love, a future. I thought that too, until I realized he had no idea who I was when we shared that night. Now I'm carrying his child, wearing his ring, and planning my escape. Because obligation isn't love. And I won't raise my baby in a house built on duty alone. My name is Colette, Duchess of Thornfield. And tonight I'm leaving. The note sits on his desk. Short. Final. I won't be your burden any longer. Don't search for me. Mrs. Pemberton waits by the servants' entrance with our bags. The carriage is ready. In 3 hours, we'll be far from this estate. Far from the man who calls me wife, but looks at me like a mistake he's bound to for life. He's in his study now, drinking, brooding, regretting the storm that brought us together and the honor that forced him to marry me. But here's what he doesn't know yet. What will destroy him when he finds out? I'm not just running from a loveless marriage. I'm running with his child, our son, the heir he doesn't even know exists yet. And by the time he reads my note, we'll be gone. This story is entirely fiction. Any resemblance to real persons or places is purely coincidental. Before we continue, tell us, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments below. This channel is built on persistence. Subscribe if you believe in persistence. We bring you powerful stories like this one every week, but we need your support to keep going. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and let's build this community together. Your support helps us bring more stories that matter. Now, one question for you. Have you ever stayed in a situation that broke your heart because leaving felt impossible? Let's get back to Colette's story. 6 months earlier, everything was different. Colette's world changed on a night when the sky split open with thunder. Her carriage rattled along the country road between London and her brother's estate in Kent. Rain fell in sheets. Wind howled like something alive. Then the wheel hit something. A rock. A ditch. She never knew which. The carriage lurched violently. Tipped. Crashed onto its side. Colette's maid and screamed. The driver shouted. Wood splintered. Glass shattered. When the world stopped spinning, Colette found herself on the carriage floor, dress torn, cloak soaked through. Blood trickled from a cut on Anne's forehead. The driver lay unconscious outside. Anne's ankle was twisted badly. She couldn't walk. "My lady," and gasped. "You need to find help." Colette looked out at the storm. Darkness everywhere. Rain like curtains. No houses visible. No lights. But then, far in the distance, smoke. Rising above the trees. Someone had a fire, which meant shelter. "I'll be back," Colette promised. She ran. Mud sucked at her boots. Rain blinded her. Branches tore at her cloak. Her carefully pinned hair came loose, falling in wet tangles down her back. By the time she reached the building, an old hunting lodge half hidden by trees, she looked nothing like Lady Colette Beaumont, sister of Viscount Beaumont, one of London's most eligible ladies. She looked like a servant, a common girl caught in bad weather. She pushed open the door. Warmth hit her immediately. Firelight, the smell of burning wood. A man stood by the hearth. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair falling across his forehead. He wore riding clothes, expensive but mud-splattered. A gentleman, clearly, but alone. No servants visible. He turned, looked at her. His eyes were gray, storm cloud gray. "Forgive me," Colette said, breathless. Water dripped from her hair, her cloak. "My carriage overturned. I need help." He moved toward her immediately. "You're hurt." "No, but my maid is. And the driver, he's unconscious. I'll send my men." He called for his grooms. Within minutes, they were heading out into the storm with lanterns and blankets. The man gestured to the fire. "Sit. You're soaked through." Colette moved closer to the warmth. Her hands shook, from cold or fear or something else, she couldn't tell. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. In Regency England, names mattered. They carried weight, history, connections. Her name, Colette Beaumont, would tell him exactly who she was, would change how he looked at her, would make this situation impossibly complicated. Because she knew him, not personally, but she'd seen him at her brother's club, heard his name whispered in ballrooms. Laurent Devereux, Duke of Thornfield, her brother's closest friend. But right now, covered in mud, hair wild, wearing a servant's borrowed cloak, He didn't recognize her. And something reckless inside her wanted to keep it that way. Just for a moment. Just to be seen as herself, not as Beaumont's sister or a potential alliance or a lady with a dowry. Just herself. Claire, she said softly. Close enough to her real name. Far enough to hide behind. Laurent, he replied. No title. No formality. Just a name. They stood by the fire, and Colette felt the strangest sense of freedom. Here, in this abandoned lodge, with a storm raging outside, she wasn't Lady Colette. She was just Claire, a girl who'd survived a carriage accident. And he was just Laurent, a man offering shelter. His grooms returned with Anne and the driver. Anne's ankle was badly sprained, but she'd recover. The driver had a head wound, but was conscious now, breathing steady. The roads are flooding, the head groom reported. Can't move until morning, Your Grace. Your Grace. The title hung in the air. Colette saw Laurent's jaw tighten slightly. He glanced at her. She kept her face calm, but her heart hammered. She was trapped here. Overnight. With a duke. A duke who didn't know who she was. In Regency society, this situation was catastrophic. A woman alone with a man, unchaperoned, overnight. It meant ruin. Complete social destruction. The strict rules around chaperones weren't just tradition. They were survival. A woman's reputation was her only currency. One rumor, one whisper of impropriety, and she became unmarriageable. Her family's name suffered. Doors closed. Even today, in some traditional cultures, similar codes govern women's movements. Honor-based systems where a woman's virtue determines her family's standing. The consequences for breaking those rules can be severe. Social exile, forced marriage worse. Colette understood the danger she was in. But she also understood something else. No one knew she was here. Her brother thought she was safely traveling to Kent. And then the driver were injured, resting in the servants' quarters. Laurent's grooms were discreet. If she left at dawn, if she kept her identity hidden, perhaps she could escape this night without consequence. Your maid can sleep in the servants' quarters, Laurent said carefully. You'll take the bedroom upstairs. I'll remain down here. Proper. Respectful. He was offering her safety, propriety, distance. She should accept. Should go upstairs. Should wait for morning. But she didn't move. I'm too cold to sleep yet, she said. It wasn't entirely a lie. Her dress was still damp. Her skin felt ice-cold despite the fire's warmth. Laurent nodded slowly. Then stay. Warm yourself. He poured her tea from a pot sitting near the hearth. Added honey. Handed her the cup. Their fingers brushed. Something electric passed between them. Colette's breath caught. Laurent's eyes held hers for a moment too long. Then he stepped back, cleared his throat, looked away. But the air between them had changed. They sat by the fire, started talking. He asked about her life. She invented answers, half-truths wrapped in fiction. Said she was a companion to a wealthy family. Traveled often. Had no parents living. He told her about the weight of his title. The loneliness of his position, the expectation that he marry soon to secure his line and produce an heir. Every woman I meet wants the coronet, he said quietly, not the man beneath it. Colette understood that loneliness too well. As Viscount Beaumont's sister, she'd watched men pursue her for connections, not affection. They saw her dowry, her brother's influence, her potential children carrying Beaumont blood. They never saw her. Her brother screened every suitor carefully. Too carefully. He rejected them all, finding fault with each one. At 23, Colette remained unmarried, practically a spinster by society's standards. She'd begun to wonder if she'd ever be chosen for herself. Perhaps you're looking in the wrong places, she said softly. Laurent's gray eyes found hers. Perhaps the right woman doesn't exist in my world. The fire crackled between them. Rain hammered the roof. Thunder rolled in the distance. And in that moment, the careful distance they'd maintained began to crumble. Laurent moved closer. Not touching. Just closer. You're different, he said. Different how? You look at me like I'm just a man. Not a title. Not a fortune. Just me. Isn't that what you are? I used to think so. Before I inherited. Now I'm not sure anymore. Colette's heart ached for him. For the loneliness in his voice. For the weight he carried. She reached out. Touched his hand. He looked down at their joined fingers. then up at her face. "Claire," he whispered. And then he kissed her. Colette knew she should pull away. Should stop this. Should remember who she really was, and who he was, and all the reasons this was impossible. But she didn't. She kissed him back. What happened next was inevitable and catastrophic and beautiful and terrible all at once. They became lovers in that abandoned hunting lodge, with the storm raging outside and the fire burning low. Colette gave him something she could never get back: her innocence, her virtue, her future. In Regency society, a woman's virginity was everything. It determined her marriageability, her value, her entire worth. Lose it outside marriage, and you became ruined, damaged goods, unmarriageable. She knew this, knew the cost. But in that moment, wrapped in Laurent's arms, feeling seen and wanted for the first time in her life, she didn't care. She chose him. She chose this night. She chose to be reckless. Dawn came gray and cold. Colette woke in Laurent's arms, reality crashing down like ice water. What had she done? She dressed quickly, quietly. Laurent stirred, but didn't wake fully. His grooms had the roads cleared. Her carriage was repaired, and waited by the door, eyes full of questions she didn't ask. Laurent appeared as Colette prepared to leave. His hair was disheveled, his shirt untucked. He looked younger in the morning light, vulnerable. "Will I see you again?" he asked. Colette's heart twisted. She should tell him, should explain who she really was, should give him her true name and let whatever happened next happen. But fear closed her throat. What if he felt trapped? What if this beautiful night became an obligation? What if he looked at her brother and saw betrayal? What if he regretted everything? "Perhaps," she whispered. Then she climbed into the carriage and left. As the wheels carried her away from the hunting lodge, Colette pressed her hand against her chest and tried to breathe. She'd just given herself to her brother's best friend, to a duke, to a man who didn't even know her real name. The magnitude of her mistake settled on her shoulders like stones. But she told herself it would be fine. No one knew. Laurent would never find out who she really was. Their paths wouldn't cross. She could keep this secret forever. She was wrong. 6 weeks passed. Colette's monthly courses didn't come. She waited, told herself it was stress, travel, anything but the truth. But then the nausea started. Morning sickness that left her weak and trembling. Her breasts grew tender. Her body felt strange, foreign. She couldn't deny it anymore. She was pregnant. The realization hit her alone in her bedroom, staring at her reflection in the mirror. A baby, growing inside her. Laurent's child. Panic set in, sharp and merciless. In Regency England, an unmarried woman with child faced absolute destruction. She'd be sent away to the countryside in disgrace, hidden until the baby came, forced to give the child up or raise it in shame. Her brother's reputation would suffer. The Beaumont name would be tainted with scandal, and the child, born illegitimate, would have no rights, no inheritance, no future. The 1753 Marriage Act had made the legal distinctions brutally clear. Legitimate children inherited property, titles, wealth. Illegitimate children, bastards, inherited nothing. They couldn't use their father's name, couldn't claim his fortune, couldn't enter society. It didn't matter if the father was a duke. Didn't matter if he was wealthy beyond measure. A child born outside marriage was worth nothing in the eyes of the law. Even today, inheritance laws in most countries have changed to protect children born outside marriage. But in Colette's time, her baby would be legally invisible. She pressed her hands against her still flat stomach and tried not to weep. What had she done? She couldn't tell her brother, couldn't tell anyone. She was alone with this secret, this consequence, this life growing inside her. Days passed in agonizing slowness. Colette barely ate, barely slept. She wore looser dresses, avoided her brother's sharp eyes, and tried to figure out what to do. Then, 3 days after she'd confirmed her pregnancy, disaster struck. Laurent Devereux arrived at Viscount Beaumont's London townhouse. Colette was in the drawing room when the butler announced him. She stood frozen, teacup trembling in her hand. Laurent walked in. His eyes swept the room, polite, casual, then landed on her. Recognition hit him like a physical blow. His face went pale, then red, then carefully, deliberately blank. That aristocratic mask she'd seen 100 times in ballrooms. The one that hid everything. But she'd seen his eyes. Seen the shock. The realization. He knew. "Beaumont," Laurent said to her brother, his voice remarkably steady. "I need to speak with you. Privately." Her brother frowned. "Of course. My study. And your sister should join us." The air in the room turned to ice. Every servant stopped moving. Every guest went silent. Colette set down her teacup before she dropped it. Her hands shook. Her legs barely held her weight. She followed the two men into her brother's study, feeling like she was walking to her execution. Laurent closed the door, turned, looked directly at her brother. "I've compromised Lady Colette," he said bluntly. "We must marry immediately." Her brother's face went white. "What?" "6 weeks ago. The hunting lodge. The storm." Laurent's voice was flat, factual. No emotion. Just truth. "I didn't know who she was. She gave a false name. But ignorance doesn't change what happened." Colette watched her brother's hands curl into fists. Watched him look at his closest friend with something close to hatred. "You seduced my sister?" "We seduced each other," Laurent said quietly. "And now I will marry her. It's the only honorable course. Honor. Duty. Obligation." Not once did he say love. Not once did he look at her with warmth. He looked at her like a problem to be solved. Colette felt something inside her chest crack. Her brother turned to her. "Is this true?" She couldn't speak, could only nod. "Did he force you?" "No," she whispered. Her brother's face twisted with pain and anger and disappointment. "Then you're a fool, Colette. Both of you are fools." But he didn't refuse the marriage. Couldn't refuse. Because in their world, this was the only solution. The only way to save her reputation, protect the Beaumont name, and legitimize the child she carried. Though Laurent didn't know about the baby yet. "We'll arrange the wedding immediately," her brother said coldly. Quietly. No fanfare. Laurent nodded. Agreed. Then he looked at Colette. Really looked at her. "I'm sorry," he said. And those 2 words broke her heart. Because he was apologizing. For meeting her. For that night. For having to marry her. She was his mistake. His burden. His trap. They married within a week. A small ceremony in her brother's chapel. No guests beyond immediate family. No celebration. Colette wore white, but felt like she was dressed in mourning. Laurent spoke his vows clearly, firmly. Slipped a ring on her finger. Kissed her forehead, formal, cold. She became the Duchess of Thornfield through scandal, not choice. The wedding breakfast was silent. Her brother didn't speak to Laurent. Laurent didn't speak to her. When the meal ended, Laurent's carriage took them to his estate, Thornfield Manor, a massive stone building in Hampshire. Beautiful. Cold. Empty. Laurent showed her to her chambers. The Duchess's rooms, connected to his by a shared sitting room. "You'll want for nothing," he said. "My staff will attend to your needs. You have access to my accounts. Whatever you require, simply ask." So polite. So distant. "Laurent, I have business to attend to. Rest. Settle in. We'll dine together this evening." Then he left. Colette stood alone in her beautiful prison and tried not to cry. Weeks passed. Laurent was courteous. Provided for her generously. Treated her with the respect due a duchess. But he never touched her. Never came to her rooms at night. Never looked at her with warmth. They lived like strangers who happened to share a name. Colette's pregnancy progressed. She was 17 weeks now. Soon her condition would be visible. And still Laurent didn't know. She tried to tell him several times. Tried to bridge the gap between them. But every attempt failed. One evening, she found him in his study. Drinking brandy. Staring into the fire. "Laurent, we need to talk." "About what?" His voice was polite. Distant. "About us. About why you." "There is no us, Colette." He didn't look at her. Just kept staring at the flames. "There is a marriage of necessity. I compromised you. I married you. I will provide for you and any children we have. What more do you expect?" The words hit like slaps. "I expect a husband who doesn't look at me like I'm a prison sentence." His jaw tightened. "You lied about who you were. Because I was frightened. And now we're both trapped." Trapped. That word echoed in her mind for days. She was a trap. A snare. An obligation he'd never wanted. The night in the hunting lodge. That beautiful, reckless night when he'd looked at her like she was everything, was gone. Dead. This was her reality now. A husband who resented her. A marriage built on duty. And soon, a child who would grow up in this cold, loveless house. Colette made her decision in the dark hours of early morning. She couldn't live like this. Couldn't raise her baby in a place where love was absent and resentment filled every silence. Better to leave. Better to build a small, honest life somewhere far away than stay in this beautiful cage. She confided in Mrs. Iris Pemberton, her lady's maid, a widow in her 40s who'd served Colette's family for years. "I want to leave," Colette whispered. "Will you come with me?" Mrs. Pemberton's eyes filled with understanding. "Where would we go, my lady?" "Somewhere small. Quiet. Where no one knows the Duke of Thornfield or his Duchess. And when the child comes, I'll be a widow. My husband died tragically. I'm alone but respectable." It was a desperate plan, fragile as glass. But desperation had become Colette's constant companion. They planned carefully. Took money from Colette's accounts. Not much, just enough to survive. Packed simple dresses. Left the jewels behind. The night of her escape, Colette stood in her chambers and looked at the life she was abandoning. The title, the wealth, the security. All of it meant nothing without love. She wrote a note for Laurent. Left it on his desk. "I won't be your burden any longer. Don't search for me." Then she walked to the servants' entrance where Mrs. Pemberton waited with their bags. The carriage was ready. In 3 hours, they'd be far from Thornfield. Far from the man who called her wife, but looked at her like a mistake. Colette climbed into the carriage and didn't look back. The village of Millbrook sat in the countryside of rural Derbyshire, far from London's glittering ballrooms and further still from Hampshire's grand estates. Small, quiet, forgotten, perfect. Colette arrived as the sun rose over rolling hills. The carriage stopped in the village square, a simple space with a church, an inn, a handful of shops. Mrs. Pemberton helped her down. Colette's legs shook. From travel or fear or relief, she couldn't tell. "We're here, my lady," Mrs. Pemberton said softly. "Not my lady anymore," Colette whispered. "From now on, I'm Mrs. Claire Ashton, a widow. My husband was a merchant who died in a shipping accident." Mrs. Pemberton nodded. "And I'm your companion. Your late husband's aunt, perhaps?" "Perfect." They found lodging at the inn first. A simple room. Clean sheets. A window overlooking the village green. Colette sat on the bed and felt something unfamiliar settle over her. Peace. For the first time in months, she could breathe. No servants watching her every move. No husband avoiding her eyes. No weight of a title she'd never wanted. Just silence. Space. Freedom. Over the next few days, they found a cottage to rent. Small but charming. 2 bedrooms. A kitchen. A garden that needed tending. The landlord, an elderly man named Mr. Hartley, asked few questions. "Lost your husband recently?" he said, eyes kind. 6 months ago, Colette lied smoothly. "A shipping accident off the coast of Dover. Terrible business, the sea. My condolences." "Thank you. And you're expecting, I see." Colette's hand went instinctively to her belly. At 19 weeks, her pregnancy was becoming visible. "Yes, the baby is all I have left of him." Mr. Hartley's expression softened. "Well, you'll find Millbrook a good place to raise a child. Quiet, safe, good people here." He was right. The villagers welcomed her without suspicion, brought her bread and preserves, offered advice about pregnancy and childbirth, invited her to church on Sundays. A widow with a baby on the way was sympathetic, deserving of kindness. No one questioned her story. Colette settled into village life with surprising ease. She tended her garden, attended church services, helped with local charity work, sewing clothes for the poor, visiting sick neighbors. The women of Millbrook adopted her into their circle. Mrs. Fletcher, the vicar's wife. Mrs. Green, who ran the bakery. Old Mrs. Whitfield, who delivered half the babies in the village. They clucked over her growing belly, brought her tonics for nausea, shared stories of their own pregnancies. For the first time in her life, Colette felt truly seen. Not as Lady Colette Beaumont, not as the Duchess of Thornfield, just as Claire, a woman, a mother-to-be. Her pregnancy progressed steadily. 20 weeks. 25. 30. Her belly grew round and heavy. The baby moved constantly, strong kicks that made her gasp and smile. She talked to her child at night, alone in her small bedroom. "Your father doesn't want us," she whispered, hands on her belly. "But I want you. I want you more than anything. And that's enough. We'll be enough for each other." The baby kicked in response, and Colette's heart swelled. She'd made the right choice. She was sure of it. Better to raise her child in this small, honest village than in Thornfield's cold grandeur. Better to be loved by simple, kind people than tolerated by a resentful husband. Months passed. Autumn turned to winter. Snow fell on Millbrook's cobblestone streets. Christmas came and went, quiet, peaceful. Colette grew larger, moved slower. Her back ached. Her ankles swelled. Mrs. Whitfield visited regularly now, checking on her. "Baby's positioned well," the old woman said, hands on Colette's belly. "Should come in the next few weeks. You feeling ready?" "As ready as I can be. First babies are always frightening. But you're strong. You'll do fine." Colette hoped she was 37 weeks pregnant now. Any day the baby could come. She'd prepared as best she could. A cradle, baby clothes, linens. Everything was ready, except her heart. Because late at night, when she couldn't sleep, Colette thought about Laurent. Wondered if he'd found her note. If he'd been relieved or angry. If he'd searched at all. Probably not. He'd likely been grateful for her disappearance. Free of his burden. Free to live his life without the weight of an unwanted wife. The thought hurt more than it should. Colette told herself she didn't care. Told herself she'd moved on. But she knew she was lying. She'd loved him. Still loved him. That night in the hunting lodge hadn't been just passion. It had been connection. Understanding. Something real. But Laurent had never felt the same. To him, she'd always been Claire who lied. The woman who trapped him into marriage. Colette pressed her hand against her aching heart and tried to let him go. Laurent Devereux found Colette's note at dawn. He'd spent the night in his study, drinking, trying to numb the guilt that had been eating him alive for weeks. He'd been cruel to her. Cold, distant, all because his pride was wounded. She'd lied about who she was. Made him feel like a fool. Trapped him into marriage. Except, had she really trapped him? Or had he trapped himself by being too blind to see what he'd had? That night in the hunting lodge, he'd felt something he'd never felt before. Connection. Understanding. Like he'd finally found someone who saw him. Not his title, not his wealth, just him. And then he'd discovered she was Beaumont's sister. That she'd lied. That everything between them had been built on deception. His anger had been immediate and overwhelming. But somewhere between the wedding and now, anger had faded. What remained was emptiness. Laurent missed her. Missed the woman she'd been in that lodge. The way she'd looked at him. The sound of her laugh. He'd been planning to talk to her. To apologize. To try to build something real from their broken foundation. But when he climbed the stairs to her chambers that morning, intending to finally bridge the gap between them, he found them empty. Her clothes were gone. Her jewelry, except for her wedding ring, left on the dressing table. And on his desk, a note. "I won't be your burden any longer. Don't search for me." Laurent's world shattered. She was gone. His wife. His Duchess. Gone. He tore through the house, demanding answers. When had she left? How? Who helped her? The servants knew nothing. Or claimed to know nothing. Only her lady's maid was missing too, Mrs. Pemberton. Laurent rode to Beaumont's townhouse immediately. The Viscount met him at the door, face already hard with accusation. "Where is she?" Beaumont demanded. "I don't know. She left. Took her maid. Left a note saying not to search for her. And you're surprised?" Beaumont's voice was cold with contempt. "You treated her like a burden from the moment you married her. What did you expect?" "I expected her to stay. To talk to me. To give me a chance to." "To what? Apologize for making her feel worthless? For looking at her like she ruined your life?" Laurent had no answer. Because Beaumont was right. He'd done all those things. Said all those words. And now she was gone. "I need to find her," Laurent said quietly. "Why?" "So you can drag her back to that cold mausoleum you call home. So I can tell her the truth." "Which is?" Laurent met his friend's eyes. "That I love her. That I've been a fool. That I want a real marriage, not an obligation. Beaumont's expression shifted slightly. You love her. I think I've loved her since that night in the lodge. I just didn't realize it until she was gone. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Beaumont sighed. Then find her. Bring her home. And Laurent, if you hurt her again, friend or not, I'll destroy you. Understood. Laurent hired investigators across England. The best trackers. The most discreet inquirers. He gave them Colette's description. Mrs. Pemberton's. The timing of their departure. Then he waited. Days passed. Then weeks. Every lead went nowhere. A woman matching Colette's description had been seen in Dover. But it wasn't her. Another sighting in Bristol. Also wrong. Laurent grew desperate. He rode from village to village himself, following rumors, chasing shadows. His appearance shocked those who knew him. The Duke of Thornfield, always perfectly groomed, always controlled, now looked haggard, unshaven, wild-eyed. He barely slept, barely ate. All he could think about was Colette, alone, possibly frightened, believing he didn't want her. Months passed. October became November. November became December. Laurent spent Christmas alone at Thornfield, staring at Colette's empty chambers. He replayed their last conversation endlessly. We're both trapped. Those words haunted him. She'd believed she was his prison, his burden, when the truth was she'd been his salvation, and he'd been too blind and proud to see it. January arrived cold and bitter. Laurent had nearly given up hope when his lead investigator brought news. Your Grace, we may have found her. Laurent's heart stopped. Where? A widow matching the Duchess's description has been living in Millbrook, Derbyshire. Goes by the name Mrs. Claire Ashton. She's heavily pregnant, my lord. Very close to her time. Pregnant. The word hit Laurent like a fist. She was carrying his child. Had been carrying his child when she left. And he hadn't known. Hadn't noticed. What kind of husband was he? How far is Millbrook? He demanded. 2 days' ride, your Grace. I leave immediately. Laurent rode through the night without stopping. He pushed his horse hard. Too hard, probably, but he couldn't slow down. Colette was pregnant, about to give birth, by the sound of it. She needed him, whether she knew it or not. He reached Millbrook at dawn. The village was small, peaceful, covered in snow. Laurent found the cottage easily. His investigator had given detailed directions. Small, humble, smoke rising from the chimney. His hands shook as he dismounted. She was inside, right there. After 5 months of searching, he knocked. Footsteps approached. The door opened. Mrs. Pemberton stood there. Her face went pale. Your Grace. Where is she? Laurent's voice was rough from lack of sleep. My lady doesn't wish to see you. I don't care what she wishes. She's my wife. She's carrying my child. A voice came from inside the cottage. Quiet. Steady. Let him in, Mrs. Pemberton. Laurent stepped inside. The cottage was small but warm. A fire burned in the hearth. Simple furniture. Clean floors. And standing by the window, Colette. She wore a simple dress. Her hair was braided loosely over one shoulder. Her belly was huge. She looked ready to give birth any moment. She was the most beautiful thing Laurent had ever seen. You found me, she said quietly. Laurent couldn't speak, could only stare. She was here. Real. Safe. Did you think I wouldn't search? He finally managed. I thought you'd be relieved I was gone. The words were like knives. Relieved? His voice cracked. Colette, I've been losing my mind for 5 months. Why? Your obligation is gone. You're free. I don't want to be free. The words burst out of him, loud and desperate. Mrs. Pemberton quietly left the room, closing the door behind her. Laurent and Colette stood alone. I don't want to be free, Laurent repeated, quieter now. I want my wife. I want my child. I want the woman I fell in love with in that hunting lodge. Colette's eyes filled with tears. You didn't love me. You married me because you had to. I married you because honor demanded it, Laurent admitted. But I would choose you now. I would choose you 1,000 times. You called me a trap. I was an idiot. Laurent crossed the room. Stopped just in front of her. You weren't the trap, Colette. My own pride was. My anger at being deceived. My inability to see what was right in front of me. And what was that? The woman I love. The woman I've loved since she walked into that hunting lodge soaking wet and fierce and beautiful. Colette's breath hitched. You love me. Desperately. Completely. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. Sorry I made you feel unwanted. Sorry I drove you away. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I thought you hated me for trapping you. You didn't trap me. I trapped myself. Laurent reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he placed his hands gently on her swollen belly. And this? Our child. This isn't a burden. It's a gift. The baby kicked against his palm. Laurent's breath caught. Wonder filled his face. He's strong, Colette whispered. Or she. Or she. They stood like that. A duke who'd searched for months. A duchess who'd run to protect her heart. A child moving between them. In the aristocratic world they came from, heirs were everything. The laws of primogeniture, where the eldest son inherited the title, lands, and fortune, made producing legitimate children critically important. A duke without an heir risked his title dying out, passing to distant cousins, creating succession crises. Even today, some countries maintain modified versions of these inheritance laws, though most have moved toward equal inheritance regardless of gender or birth order. But standing here, feeling his child move beneath his hands, Laurent realized something. The title didn't matter. The inheritance didn't matter. What mattered was this: his wife, his child, his family. Come home, Laurent said softly. Let me be the husband I should have been from the start. Let me love you the way you deserve. Colette searched his face, looking for truth, for sincerity. She found it. You hurt me, she said quietly. I know. You made me feel worthless. I'm sorry. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. How do I know you won't change your mind? That this isn't just about the baby. Laurent cupped her face gently. Because I came here before I knew about the baby. I've been searching for 5 months. Not for my heir. Not for my duchess. For you. For Colette. The woman who looked at me like I was just a man and made me feel more alive than I'd ever felt before. More tears fell. I was so scared. I know. I'm sorry. I didn't know what else to do. You did what you had to. You survived. You protected our child. You were braver than I was. Colette let out a shaky breath. I still love you. I tried not to, but I do. Thank God, Laurent whispered. Then he kissed her. Gentle, reverent, full of promise. When they pulled apart, Colette was crying and smiling at the same time. Take us home, she whispered. They didn't leave immediately. Colette was too far along in her pregnancy to risk travel. Mrs. Whitfield, the village midwife, confirmed it. Baby could come any day now, she said firmly. Best stay put until after the birth. So Laurent stayed in Millbrook. He took a room at the inn, visited Colette daily, held her hand, talked to their baby. The villagers were shocked when they learned Mrs. Ashton's husband hadn't actually died, that he was a duke who'd been searching for her for months. But the way Laurent looked at Colette, the tenderness in his touch, it won them over. That's real love, Mrs. Fletcher whispered to Mrs. Green. You can't fake that. 3 weeks after Laurent arrived, Colette went into labor. It started in the early hours of morning, a tightening in her belly, then pain. Mrs. Pemberton sent for Mrs. Whitfield immediately. Laurent paced outside the cottage like a caged animal. Hours passed. He heard Colette cry out, heard the midwife giving instructions. He'd never felt more helpless in his life. Then, finally, a baby's cry. Strong, loud, healthy. Laurent's knees nearly gave out with relief. Mrs. Pemberton emerged, smiling. You have a son, Your Grace. And her ladyship as well. Can I see them? Give us a few moments. Those moments felt like hours. Finally, Mrs. Pemberton opened the door. Come in. Laurent stepped inside. Colette lay in bed, exhausted but radiant. And in her arms, a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. Their son. Laurent crossed the room slowly, sat on the edge of the bed. He's perfect, Colette whispered. The baby had dark hair, a serious little face, tiny fists. Can I hold him? Laurent asked. Colette carefully transferred the baby into his arms. Laurent looked down at his son and felt his heart crack open. This tiny person, this perfect, innocent life. His child. What should we name him? Colette asked. Laurent thought for a moment. Thomas, after my father. Thomas Devereux, the future Duke of Thornfield. Their son made a small sound, and they both smiled. In Regency society, this moment was everything. The birth of a legitimate heir secured the succession, protected the family line, ensured the title would continue. But holding his son, Laurent realized something profound. This child wasn't valuable because he was an heir. He was valuable because he existed, because he was loved. Title or no title, fortune or no fortune, this baby was precious. I love you, Laurent said to Colette. Both of you, more than I knew it was possible to love. Colette's eyes filled with happy tears. We love you too. 6 weeks later, they returned to Thornfield. The estate looked different to Colette now. Not like a prison, like a home. Laurent had made changes, brought in more staff, warmed the cold rooms, filled the house with life. Their marriage, which had begun in obligation and nearly died in resentment, slowly transformed into something real. They learned each other, talked honestly, forgave mistakes. Laurent learned that love required vulnerability, that pride destroyed more than it protected, that the people we love deserve our honesty, not just our duty. Colette learned that sacrifice wasn't always about running away. Sometimes it meant staying, fighting, demanding to be loved instead of accepting scraps. And both learned that perfect beginnings don't create lasting love. Commitment does. Forgiveness does. Choosing each other daily, even when it's hard, that's what builds something real. One night, months after their return to Thornfield, they sat by the fire in their shared chambers. Thomas slept peacefully in his cradle. Colette rested against Laurent's chest. Do you ever regret it? She asked quietly. That night in the hunting lodge? Never. It brought me you. Even though I lied? Even though you were protecting yourself. I understand that now. Colette was quiet for a moment. I used to think love was supposed to be easy, perfect, like in novels. And now I know it's messy, complicated, built from broken pieces and second chances. Laurent kissed her forehead. And worth every difficult moment. Yes, worth everything. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their son sleep. One night had changed everything, but it was the months after. The pain, the separation, the search, the reunion, that taught them what love truly costs, and what it's truly worth. The greatest love stories don't begin perfectly. They begin broken, messy, complicated, and they become beautiful through the choice to keep trying, through sacrifice, through forgiveness, through love. Colette and Laurent's story teaches us something important about sacrifice and love. Real sacrifice isn't always dramatic. It's not always about grand gestures or running away. Sometimes, sacrifice means staying when leaving feels safer. Means fighting for what you want instead of accepting what seems inevitable. Means demanding to be truly loved instead of settling for duty. Colette sacrificed her comfort, her security, even her title, because she knew her child deserved to grow up surrounded by real love, not cold obligation. Laurent sacrificed his pride, his anger, his need to be right, because he finally understood that the woman he loved mattered more than his wounded ego. And together, they built something real from broken foundations. The lesson here isn't that love conquers all. It's that love requires work, requires honesty, requires the courage to be vulnerable and the strength to forgive. Perfect circumstances don't create perfect relationships. Commitment does. Choice does. Showing up every day and choosing each other, even when it's hard, that's what builds something that lasts. One night changed everything for Colette and Laurent, but it was everything that came after that taught them what love truly means. If this story touched you, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment. What would you have done in Colette's position? Run or stay and fight. And subscribe for more powerful stories every week. Your support helps us bring stories that matter. Stories about sacrifice, persistence, and the courage to fight for love. Thank you for watching. Until next time, choose love. Choose forgiveness. Choose to keep trying. Because the greatest love stories are the ones we build from broken pieces. This story explores themes from Regency England, 1811 to 1820, when the 1753 Marriage Act denied illegitimate children inheritance rights. Women had no legal rights in marriage until the 1857 Matrimonial Causes Act. Forced marriages to preserve reputation were common among the aristocracy during this period.